The Book of Revelation. Wow, Nick, I hope our listeners do not expect that we're going to decipher everything what we can find in the Book of Revelation, and neither probably the lesson intended to do so. Whatever it is, and as much as it is, this quarter will be a big challenge for us.
The angle and the approach make a big difference when studying anything, but especially matters like the Book of Revelation. One can focus on imagery, symbols, events, catastrophes, persecutions, and create an apocalyptic world that I'm not really interested in. But if the focus is at the right place, if we look at the message, if we look at what is God trying to reveal to us, then actually the study of the Book of Revelation can be very spiritual and enriching.
And we finished last quarter with some quotes from Dr. Stefanovic, who is a professor of New Testament in Andrews University Seminary and specialized specifically on the Book of Revelation. Who knew back then that we're going to be diving into a much more deliberate study of his ideas and his lectures in this quarter?
From Uriah Smith through Jacques Ducan, Pauline, we have a wealth of studies as Adventists on the subject. It will be interesting to follow Dr. Stefanovic's lead this quarter.
And he starts his introduction of our journey with 4 propositions that will constitute the base of our study. Their purpose for us is to stay focused and to be united in our approach when we study the Book of Revelation. Without further ado, I can say I'm excited, and I hope we get blessed when we read and when we listen to the words of this prophecy and keep the things that are written in it.
Yes, but you can't just mention 4 propositions and not say what they are.
You have a point.
So let me try to summarize them. Proposition number 1, entering into this study, is that the message is from God, but the wording is human. It's communicated by John through his understanding in his time. Proposition number 2 is that prophecy follows the flow of history. Number 3 is that the structure of the book is important, and for the purpose of this study, we are identifying a threefold structure, which is the first 3 chapters of the book address primarily the concerns and the situation of the church during John's days. But the text also prophetically addresses and concerns the situation of the church in 8 different periods of history. Chapters 4 to first half of 11 repeat the history of the church from John's day through the end of time by using different symbols to add more details. And the last part concerns primarily the end of time. Now, the last proposition, number 4, for this study, is that Revelation is about Jesus and what he is doing for us. This is the center of the message. Okay, now, so let's jump into the first lesson.
The Gospel from Patmos. The book of Revelation is all about Christ, and in this sense, it's the good news. It is a revelation from Christ, but it's also a revelation about Christ. What it does is continue the story of Christ after his ascension, because Jesus' ministry did not end on the cross. His words were, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. My Father's house has many rooms. I'm going to prepare a room for all of you." This preparation part of his ministry up in heaven is what Revelation is all about. Imagine only if we didn't have John writing down those visions that he had on Patmos, personally revealed from Christ.
The lesson says the prophecies of Revelation are an expression of God's care for his people. Now, this is important. Imagine John imprisoned on the island. Imagine the first Christians going through their struggles and wondering, what's next? How long more should we wait? We believe God, but we're getting a bit lost. God is sending a message, trying to address these concerns and to unveil the curtain a little bit.
And every book has a message and has its own purpose. Revelation is all about telling Jesus' followers what must soon take place. And in today's words, it talks about future events from the apostles' perspective in first century, but also from our perspective looking forward for some final events before Jesus comes back. What should we expect from the prophecies? Mainly to teach us how to live our lives today, but also how to prepare ourselves for the future. Dr. Stefanovic sends a clear message of warning that as it happened before, it can happen in our days too. Lots of speculation, lots of sensationalism that can damage the message of Christ and scare people or make them disillusioned and discouraged. Not only that, but he even mentions that it can milk the flocks from their personal finance and properties. So, let's stay focused when we learn and interpret the prophecies.
This lesson is an introduction to the study and looks at the title, the purpose of the book, and then gets into other details like the language and form of expression.
The title of the lesson is The Gospel from Patmos, but as much as the Gospel were written in a historical, literal sequence or form, just the opposite is found to be the case with the book of Revelation. It's mainly symbolical, unless the text points out inversely. The lesson derives this important conclusion from the word signified that is used in verse 1 in chapter 1 of the book of Revelation. And he sent and signified it by his angel to his servant John. The original Greek word semeno carries the meaning of to show by symbolic signs, which tells us that the angel used symbolic presentations to show John the events and the scenes that he's going to describe in his book. Why is this very, very important? It would keep us against distorting the prophetic message. In his own words, Dr. Stefanovic.
So when we read Revelation, unless the text points to a literal meaning, we need to interpret it symbolically. But our minds can be very creative on what these symbols mean to me, what they speak to me. The problem is, they were not shown to me. And if we want to understand the message correctly, we need to understand what they meant to John in his context and in the context of the Bible. Because there is continuity in what God was doing in the past and what he's doing in the future.
Yeah. And John continues and he offers a customary greeting in verse 4 to 6 in chapter 1 to all the churches that his letter will reach to. And he presents there that the Father, the seven spirits in front of the throne, and Jesus Christ are the originators of his book. I'm not sure how to express my feelings, but I believe that some Christians will have a hard time reading into those verses and again denying the Trinity of God. And although this is completely off topic, I believe it's worth mentioning because the book of Revelation will continue to constantly remind us about the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in some sort of shape and their ministry in the chapters to come.
We are barely starting the book and things are already getting confusing. 7 spirits? The introduction to the lesson made an important disclaimer that we're not going to be able to get into the details of every symbol and how it's being identified and interpreted, but we'll be mainly painting a picture. So these 7 spirits represent the universal work of the Holy Spirit among the churches. We'll be seeing the number 7 a lot with its main representation of fullness. In essence, in the introduction to Revelation, we are seeing the full involvement of God in our human drama.
And finally, John concludes his chapter, his prologue, with the imperative, look, he is coming with the clouds. And this says it all for me in this chapter. John is waiting for Jesus' return. And after all, he was there when he ascended into the clouds. He knows the looks of it. He knows the feel of it. He knows the certainty of it. It is as literal as he experienced it, and it is as visible as he saw it. The book of Revelation is about Jesus Christ, his people, and his return back.
Join us next week to look among the lampstands.